Nashville police released footage of crossfire with a suspect of the Tennessee elementary school shooting.
Pursuers carefully make their way from classroom to classroom. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Ricky Mathay.
And I am Nina Richie Alagaw Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines.
Department of Education says there are no plans to revert students' summer vacation. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. urges Congress to craft law against malnutrition. U.S. President Joe Biden asks lawmakers to act reasonably after Nashville shooting. World Health Organization experts revise COVID-19 vaccine advice for kids and teens. And Harvard University offers Tagalog language courses.
The Department of Education, or DepEd, has no plans of bringing back the students' vacation to April and May. This despite the intense heat being experienced during this dry season. In a message to reporters, DepEd spokesperson Attorney Michael Powa says the department leaves the discretion to the school heads of whether to suspend in-person classes and switch to blended learning, especially if the weather is not conducive for studying. Some senators insist on bringing back the summer vacation of students to April and May, following an incident in Cabuyao City, Laguna, where 100 students were brought to hospital after a surprise fire drill. Some students fainted due to hunger and dehydration. During the fire drill, disaster management officials reported that the heat index in the city reached between 39 to 42 degrees Celsius.
Additional incentives for the dependents of indigent farmers have been proposed in the House of Representatives. House Bill 7572 aims to ease the situation of farmers by giving subsidies to children of qualified indigent farmers. The children, however, must be enrolled in agriculture courses and other related fields of study at state universities and colleges. They will be given free tuition and other school fees, as well as other incentives and subsidies such as living and transportation allowances. The bill states this assistance is separate from the benefits provided under the Republic Act 10931 or the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act.
It is time to have a law to address the country's problem with malnutrition. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. emphasizes this during his attendance at the launching of the Philippine Multi-Sectoral Nutrition Project, or PMNP. Marcos says there is a need for a well-orchestrated and coordinated strategy to implement not only the PMNP, but also other related nutritional programs throughout the country. The president calls on lawmakers to pass a law to help establish the necessary guidelines to eradicate malnutrition and improve the quality of primary health care and nutrition in the Philippines. The executive branch recognizes that health care is not a priority for local governments due to their limited capacity, ability, skills, and manpower to reach all threshold levels. Marcos also urges the Department of Health, or DOH, to collaborate with other relevant government agencies for the joint implementation of proper diets, policies, and practices for public health. The World Bank is expected to provide around 10 billion pesos to fund the project, aiming to promote the health and nutrition of children in 235 local government units throughout the country.
The House of Representatives is urging their counterparts in the Senate to pass a bill A proposal that would establish the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. The House hopes the Senate will pass the bill when it resumes session after the summer break. According to House Ways and Means Committee Chairperson and Albay Congressman Joey Salceda, it is timely for the Philippines to have a CDC to address the threat of various diseases due to the effects of climate change. Salceda states that the country's hot weather caused by the El Niño phenomenon can be considered a hotbed for epidemics. Salceda emphasizes the need to strengthen the Department of Health, or DOH's, contingencies to quickly respond to the increase in various diseases such as cholera, chikungunya, Zika virus, in addition to continuing to take precautions against COVID-19. Under the CDC bill approved by the House of Representatives, the role of the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, will be expanded and focused on infectious diseases. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. had earlier certified as urgent the Center for Disease Control and Prevention bill.
The Philippines has a number of doctors, nurses, and other health workers. However, data from the Professional Regulatory Commission, or PRC, show only a small percentage of workers who hold jobs in their studied profession. PRC announces that up to March 24 of this year, there are 951,105 registered nurses in the country. Meanwhile, 53.5%, or only 509,297, work in the hospital. PRC Commissioner Erwin Enad says there are also 182,300 registered midwives, but only 64,475 are active in assisting births. 59.7%, or 95,039 registered physicians out of the total 159,283 are active in the country. The Department of Health, or DOH, states that a large number of health professionals do not meet the standard ratio set by the World Health Organization, or WHO. The Philippines has a population of 101.6 million. In order to strengthen the healthcare industry, the Philippines should have 116,032 physicians, 125,890 nurses, and 28,580 midwives. Salaries in the Philippines may be low for these professions. Workers apply for other jobs that are not related to the health field or may even opt to migrate to other countries. The Senate advocates the salary increase for health workers in order for them to practice their profession.
The country is currently facing a water crisis due to the hot season. Although some are considering Kaliwa Dam as an alternative source of water, it may not be the most ideal solution. This is according to Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System Administrator Leonor Cleofas, who notes that the dam is not expected to be completed until the last quarter of 2026. The dam is projected to be operational by the first quarter of 2027, providing much-needed water. With the construction of the 2022, or rather 22-kilometer tunnel from Teresa Rizal to General Nakar, Quezon, progress has been rapid. In fact, over 352 meters of the tunnel have already been completed. Cleofas says with the completion of the project, the dam will be able to provide ample water to 20 million consumers in the area.
4 weeks after the MT Princess Empress sank off the central island of Mindoro, the oil tanker is still leaking. More than half of its 800,000 liters of oil has spread over hundreds of kilometers of the Philippine Sea. Authorities have banned fishing and swimming in the region indefinitely. The decision left thousands of fishermen wondering how long they can survive.
Talagang mahalaga po sa amin ang dagat. Gawa ng dyan lang talaga kami umaasa yung... Kasi po, ang ano namin dyan, hapon at saka umaga, tanghali po. Talagang yan po lang ang pinagkakakitaan namin.
Yung kabuhayan po, lahat.
Tumigil sa araw na yun?
Kasi pinagbawal pong mga isda. Dahil ang pinagkakakitaan po lahat ng tao dito, puro sa isda, lahat. Yung saging naman po dito, binagyo, wala din mga bunga lahat. Ang niyog naman po, yung ano lang, every 2 months. Kailangan po dito ng tao, pinansyal.
For more than 2 weeks, Filipino fishermen have spent 4 hours a day cleaning up oil in exchange for a daily wage of 355 pesos from the government. Authorities estimate at least 5,000 hectares of coral reefs, seaweed, and mangroves have been affected.
Fishermen in Verde Island are seeking compensation for the damage caused by the oil spill from the sunken MT Princess Empress. Paulo Ramos has the story.
Fishermen from Verde Island have filed a formal damage claim due to the effects of the oil spill from the sunken MT Princess Empress in Oriental Mindoro. The fishermen say the oil spill has reached Verde Island, which prompted the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, or BFAR, to prohibit them from fishing. Christopher De Castro, Vice Chairman of the Bantay ng Karagatan ng Lungsod ng Batangas, says that they have been unable to fish for almost 2 weeks, resulting in lost income. De Castro adds that the fishing ban has cost the fishermen around 700 pesos per day.
Yun nga po, wala pa pong sinabi kung kailan kami pwedeng mangisda o payagan para sa paghahanap buhay para sa karagatan ng Verde Island Passage. Dahil sinasabi nila na parang baka may mga poison ang ating mga isda, kaya pinatigil muna talaga kami paghahanap buhay.
The fishermen have also signed a petition letter addressed to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, or DENR, and BFAR, as well as the provincial governments of Batangas, Oriental Mindoro, Occidental Mindoro, Romblon, and Marinduque, urging them to halt natural gas exploration in Verde Island.
At ayaw po natin mag-estimate na ito ang gusto ng mga tao, no? Pero ang malaki pong dapat mabayaran dito ay yung damages dun sa environment, no? Aside po dun sa damages, dun sa livelihood ng mga kasama nating fisher folks. Yun po yung dapat. At hindi lang po yung kabuhayan ang dapat ang kinikwenta. Kwentahin din nito ano yung mga nasisira niya dito sa ating sa Verde Island.
UNESCO has declared Verde Island as a protected area and marine sanctuary for various fish species. Paulo Ramos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming up, Nashville residents protest after elementary school shooting. United Nations chief visits Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And U.S. and South Korea sent thousands of troops into assault practice. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Mga ka-netizens, ako po si Tito Soto sa programang Reality Check. For more live and updates, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Net25 TV.
Abangan sa Counterpoint. First, an exclusive interview with former Department of Health Secretary Francisco Duque III. Sa unang pagkakataon, sasagutin na ang mga isyong binabato sa kanya. Natatandaan ko pati 15 senador ang nanawagan, pati yung isang gobernador sa Bicol na ikaw ay magbitiw sa tungkulin.
Dahil nga sa kakulangan ng kaalaman nila, lahat sila ay naghahanap ng masisisi.
So how can you be incompetent? Sa family, parang dinawit ka rin doon. Huwag niyong palalampasin. Miyerkules, alas 10:30 ng gabi sa Net25.
Puros mga sabi-sabi, wala naman mga ebidensya.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Nashville police released body camera footage of officers responding to the elementary school shooting in Tennessee, which left 3 students and 3 staff members dead. The 6-minute video on YouTube shows police making their way from classroom to classroom. Their weapons are drawn as they search for the shooter, while emergency alarms wail. In the footage that you see now, staff at the Covenant School direct police inside the building, offering information and a door key. The officers shout instructions as they clear different areas. These include classrooms with small desks and paper craft work. Multiple gunshots are heard as officers advance to a sun-filled atrium upstairs where the suspect, Audrey Hale, was killed by police. In an earlier video also released by the Nashville police, Hale is seen shooting through a set of glass doors into the school before stalking the empty halls with an assault rifle. The victims were an 8-year-old, 2 9-year-olds, and 2 teachers. One of the teachers was the longtime head of the school in the southern U.S. state. The other, a school custodian.
About 50 people gather outside the Tennessee state capitol in Nashville. They are protesting against gun violence a day after another fatal school shooting shakes the country. Amanda Rosenberger, a survivor of a school shooting in Massachusetts in December of 1992, says there are solutions, but those in power refuse to see them through.
The problem is not that we don't know what to do. We do know what to do. There is evidence-based solutions for the gun violence problem in this country and the gun violence problems in the schools. We just don't have the people in power with the political will to see it through. And so holding those people accountable, continuing to tell your story, and just pushing, always pushing. This is what we have to do. I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to lose.
Yesterday with these families who are being reunited with their children in the worst waiting room I've ever been in, gun legislation.
Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., U.S. President Joe Biden says he cannot do anything else except lead with Congress or plead with Congress to act reasonably. This after the tragic school shooting in Nashville on Monday.
Reloading! I want to remind you, the last time we passed this all was ban, violent shootings went down. Mass shootings went down for the same, how many years it was, 9 years. And
so what can you do?
So I can't do anything except plead with the Congress to act reasonably.
But Mr. President, if you can get to it.
U.S. President Joe Biden blasts Russian President Vladimir Putin's stated plan to deploy nuclear weapons in neighboring Belarus. Biden brands it dangerous talk.
What do you make of Putin's announcement that he would send those nuclear weapons to Belarus?
What I've been talking to you guys about for the last year. This is dangerous kind of talking, and it's worrisome.
The Kremlin leader announced on Saturday he was ordering the deployment of Russian tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. It will be run by fellow authoritarian leader Alexander Lukashenko as one of Russia's closest allies. Washington denounces the plan. This follows more than a year of Moscow's attempt to conquer pro-Western Ukraine. Ukraine is a neighbor of both Russia and Belarus. However, U.S. officials say they have seen no sign of Russia actually moving nuclear weaponry. Biden says Russia has not done it yet.
The U.S. Air Force admits to another failed test of a hypersonic missile system. Secretary of Air Force Frank Kendall also reveals that it was the 4th unsuccessful launch. However, Kendall declined to give specifics on what went wrong with the test. Kendall was referring to a March 13 test of the AGM-183A air launch response weapon off the coast of Southern California. News sources say U.S. forces do not have a fully operational hypersonic missile system like Russia and China. These hypersonic missiles travel at speeds over Mach 5, making them highly maneuverable and difficult to shoot down.
Spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Russia sees a long hybrid war with the West. Western intelligence has indicated that Russia hopes to quickly achieve its special military operation in Ukraine, but that has not come to pass. Yet Peskov asserts Russians had rallied around President Vladimir Putin in an unprecedented way. He says most of Putin has already achieved most of his goals in Ukraine.
The intensity of fighting between the Russian and Ukrainian troops rages in Avdiivka region, a key city near Donetsk. Our RT correspondent Igor Zdadov files the report.
Landscape of the small town of Pesky really speaks for itself when any questions are raised about the intensity of the fighting here. It is the dominating height on this part of the front, and it is surrounded by open fields, so that's why it was so difficult for the Russian troops to capture it. But now every disadvantage that the Russian army had to endure here, well, has turned into benefits.
It doesn't mean that the Russian army is in for a smooth sailing here. They have to carve open fortifications that Ukraine had 8 years to plan out and dig in.
The enemy sees us, so they shoot at us with multiple rocket launchers, 152 and 155mm howitzers, and NATO-supplied Excalibur missiles. That's why we're trying to squeeze the enemy out of residential areas with our artillery, constantly pressuring them, liberating street after street.
Citizens of neighboring Donetsk are yearning for victory on this part of the front. Their hometown is battered by shells and rockets Ukraine launches from here. The advance of the Russian forces has already pushed the enemy back, but Kiev soldiers aren't leaving the peaceful city alone willingly. Russia's special troops from the Viking unit use guided anti-tank missiles to snipe enemy positions. Kiev command have drawn reinforcements, which are in turn smashed by multiple launch rocket systems fire. Soldiers here know who they're spilling the blood for. It's the women of Donetsk who don't know if their children are safe at the playground. It's the elderly who are killed and maimed on the way to the local grocery store. All of them are valid and routine targets for Ukraine's artillery, so reluctant to leave the peaceful city be, unforgiving of its choice to divorce Kiev. I'm Agila reporting from the Donbass, RT.
The UN Atomic Watchdog Chief arrived Wednesday at Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, or ZNPP. It's a rare visit to Europe's largest atomic facility currently controlled by Russian forces. There are persistent fears over the safety of the nuclear plant in the southern Zaporizhzhia region, where there has been frequent shelling since Russian troops invaded last year. Rafael Grossi of the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, brought with him a delegation to the ZNPP. The IAEA says Grossi plans to see how the situation at the ZNPP has changed, speak with the nuclear engineers at the plant, and act as a guarantor of the rotation of members of the IAEA permanent mission. This is Grossi's second visit to Zaporizhzhia since Russia invaded Ukraine. The IAEA adds the aim of the visit is to assess firsthand the serious nuclear safety and security situation at the facility. The agency has had a team of experts inside the plant since September 2022, but Grossi has said the situation is still precarious.
U.S. and South Korean forces are put on full display with a full range of weapons during their exercises in Pohang. The exercises involved heavy weapons and amphibious assault vehicles, hovercraft, helicopters, Ospreys, and F-35Bs. It is part of Operation Freedom Shield, a larger military exercise that aims to demonstrate the combined firepower of U.S. and South Korean forces. Amid the rising tensions in the region, Washington and Seoul's exercises are usually done defensively. But Wednesday's amphibious assault was performed offensively with thousands of troops and high-end weapons. Colonel Samuel Mayer of the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit Commander says he's not concerned that they're doing anything different or odd. He adds that it is the 70th anniversary of the exercise and that it is nothing new. The commander of the 2,200 Marines says that this exercise is nothing provocative. This is after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un claims Washington and Seoul are being provocative, forcing Pyongyang to build up its nuclear arsenal and stronger weapons.
Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen heads to the United States, a stopover on her way to strengthen ties with Guatemala and Belize. China repeatedly warns U.S. officials not to meet Tsai, and any form of contact will be seen as a provocation. Elijah Villanueva has the details.
Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen's visit to the U.S. and Central America is in response to China's poaching of Taipei's diplomatic allies. Several Central and South American countries have abandoned Taiwan in favor of China in the past few years. Recently, Honduras shifted its diplomatic policy for investment and jobs that China promises. U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has said that he will meet Tsai in California, which drew the ire of Beijing. Spokesperson of China's Taiwan Affairs Office Chu Fenglian says that Tsai's transit to the U.S. is not just her waiting at the airport or hotel, but for her to meet U.S. officials and lawmakers.
台湾当局领导人所谓过境呢，本质上是依美谋独的挑衅行径，企图制造一中一台、两个中国等违反一个中国原则的事件。伺机呢，在国际上兜售台独主张，并谋求美国反华势力的支持。
She further says if Tsai has contact with House Speaker McCarthy, it will be another provocation that seriously violates the One China principle, harms China's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and destroys peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait.
我们敦促美方严格地恪守一个中国原则和中美3个联合公报规定，不安排蔡英文过境美国，甚至与美官方接触，以实际行动兑现不支持台独的严肃承诺。
U.S. responds by saying such transits by Taiwanese presidents are routine and that China should not use Tsai's trip to take any aggressive moves against Taiwan. Before her departure at Taiwan's main international airport at Taoyuan, Tsai declares that external pressure will not hinder our determination. She adds that they are calm and confident and will neither yield nor provoke. Taiwan will firmly walk on the road of freedom and democracy and go into the world. Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In a recent update to the World Health Organization or WHO's COVID-19 vaccination recommendations, experts say that kids and teenagers may not need to be inoculated. WHO's Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization, or SAGE, announced its updated roadmap to prioritize those at greatest risk of death and severe disease. The new guidelines mention high, medium, and low-risk groups. SAGE recommends additional booster doses for high-risk groups such as old people, the immunocompromised of all ages, frontline health workers, and pregnant women 6 or 12 months after their last booster dose. For those in medium-risk groups, including children and adolescents with health risks and healthy adults under the age of 60, primary vaccinations and first booster doses are advised, but additional boosters are not recommended. And for the low-risk group, healthy kids 6 months to 17 years old, vaccination is based on factors such as the disease burden and cost effectiveness. SAGE Chair Dr. Hannah Nohinek says that there is a need for children to catch up on routine vaccines they missed during quarantine compared to further vaccinating them for COVID-19. The group also says that its vaccine guidance is based on current epidemiological conditions and could change if the pandemic evolves. Up next, King Charles travels to Germany. At least 40 people killed in a fire at a Mexican migrant center. And Indonesian volcano Anak Krakatoa erupts. Stay tuned. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
This portion is brought to you by Robic Builders, Quezon City Motor Vehicle Inspection Center.
Hi guys, this is Kanisha. Abangan niyo po ako sa Letters and Music on Saturday at 1 p.m. only on Net 25. See ya!
Ito po si Jeffrey Tam at syempre magti-trip tayo dito sa Marikina. Mag-iikot ako, ang gagawin ko, magpapanggap akong sosyal na pulubi. Let's do this! Tignan natin kung ano mangyayari.
Oh no! It's beer only! Sa Net 25!
Sa Net 25.
King Charles III has landed in Germany with the Queen Consort on Wednesday for his first overseas state visit as monarch. The royal couple arrived at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport for the start of their three-day visit. Analysts say the king's underlying purpose remains the same. That is to show that Europe is still UK's diplomatic priority. Another expert believes the state visit is also to improve relations after Brexit. It should have begun at the weekend in France, but the first leg was cancelled due to civil unrest over President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms.
Humza Yousaf is confirmed by the Scottish Parliament as its new First Minister. To tell us more, here's Eribel Celestino.
Scotland's Parliament on Tuesday confirmed Humza Yousaf will replace Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister. The devolved nation's youngest and the first Muslim leader of a government in Western Europe. Yousaf, 37, narrowly won a Scottish National Party SNP leadership battle on Monday to clinch the party's top job, vowing to rejuvenate the stalled pursuit of independence for Scotland. He then secured the nominations of a majority of lawmakers in the early afternoon vote on Tuesday to become the new First Minister and will be formally sworn in at a ceremony on Wednesday. Let's hear his statement upon becoming the new First Minister.
There was a time not all that long ago when I felt I simply did not belong here in Scotland. To go from there to now leading the government as Scotland's sixth First Minister, I hope sends a strong message to every single person out there who feels that they don't belong.
Ahead of the confirmatory vote, Yousaf, the new SNP leader, acknowledged he had some very big shoes to fill, succeeding Sturgeon, but vowed to continue to ensure that Scotland is a positive, progressive voice on the world stage. He said that he will stand up unequivocally for this parliament and against any attempts to undermine devolution, referring to the UK government reforms that handed Scotland a host of powers over domestic policy in 1999. Youssef also said he would work hard to harness the potential of Scotland and every single person. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, this is Aribel Celestino for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the alliance with the United States is unshakable as he addressed a democracy summit called by President Joe Biden, who has voiced alarm over explosive judicial proposals. Netanyahu promises to seek compromise and respect basic rights. This after massive protests accused him of destroying democracy with a bid to weaken the judiciary. Biden on Tuesday called on Netanyahu to reach a compromise while calling himself a strong supporter of Israel. Netanyahu calls Biden a friend of 40 years. He notes the two countries have had their occasional differences, but he assures that the alliance between the world's greatest democracy and the strong, proud, and independent democracy of Israel is unshakable.
It was a general strike and the dismissal of Defense Minister Yoav Gallant that appear to have changed the situation in Israel. Political experts say Israel's enemies are happy to see Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government in chaos. Yet, this political mess does not sit well with the United States. Constitutional analysts believe protests in Israel affect American national security interests. They say Washington depends on Israel to stabilize the Middle East region and some key parts of Asia. The United States reportedly subsidizes Israel's security for billions of dollars. Aside from its 10-year agreement to finance Israel $3.3 billion annually, Washington also spends $500 million per year on Israel's missile defense system. A recent Congressional Research Service report says Israel is the largest cumulative recipient of U.S. foreign assistance since World War II. America's relationship with Israel is not merely organizational. Experts claim it is organic. Some believe Israel is a mirror image of the United States in its commitment to liberty, women's rights, education, free speech, capitalism, and democratic governance. But something even more significant binds the United States and Israel. Analysts often observe the two countries are equally targeted by terrorists. Hence, U.S. President Joe Biden has repeated his concern over Netanyahu's actions. And with Netanyahu's proclamation that Biden is Israel's friend of 40 years, the two nations once again forge an alliance that will pacify political unrest in the Middle East region.
The data on autism from across 11 states in the U.S. are in. The findings show that autism prevalence has increased in the communities monitored by researchers. In Washington, D.C., Rosel Feria reports.
1 in 36 8-year-old children from 11 communities in the ADDM network have been identified with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. ADDM is Autism and Developmental Disabilities Monitoring. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, the new findings are higher than the previous 2018 estimate that found a prevalence of 1 in 44. The data, however, are not representative of the entire United States. A second report on 4-year-old children in the same 11 communities highlights the impact of COVID-19. Because of interruptions in childcare and healthcare services during the pandemic, 4-year-old children were less likely to be identified with ASD. The data also show within the communities monitored, autism was detected nearly 4 times higher in boys than girls. Still, this is the first ADDM report in which the prevalence of autism among 8-year-old girls has exceeded 1%. The ADDM network is the only network to track the number and characteristics of children with autism and other developmental disabilities in multiple communities throughout the country. In Washington, D.C., Rosel Feria for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
In Mexico, at least 40 migrants have died in a fire that broke out at an immigration detention center near the U.S. border. The fire broke out shortly before midnight at the National Migration Institute facility in Ciudad Juarez. It prompted mobilization of firefighters and dozens of ambulances. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador says the deadly fire was started by migrants protesting against their expected deportation. Lopez Obrador says they put mats at the door of the shelter and set them on fire as a protest. He says they did not imagine that it would cause such a terrible tragedy. Meanwhile, Guatemalan Foreign Minister Mario Bucaro confirms that 28 Guatemalans were among the fatalities.
In Ecuador, residents desperately dig to find their loved ones after a deadly landslide hit the mountain village of Alausi. More than 60 people reported missing. The disaster was caused by months of heavy rains, which has killed at least 7 people. The mudslide happened overnight Sunday into Monday. It buried dozens of homes and injured more than 20 people.
State media reports at least 20 people are killed while 29 are injured in a bus crash in Saudi Arabia. In the province of Asir, the bus hit a bridge, overturned and caught fire. Authorities say they are still investigating the cause of the incident. However, state media reports the crash occurred due to brake failure. Authorities say victims were of different nationalities, including several Saudis.
Pakistan's Human Rights Commission rebukes feuding political parties for undermining democracy. This as the world's 5th most populous country battles an economic crisis. Commission Chairperson Nahida Jilani says they are aware there is a very menacing and irresponsible opposition there, one which has made use of violence, humiliated police, and destroyed the law and order. The fragile coalition government led by Shehbaz Sharif has been facing increasing pressure from opposition leader Imran Khan. Khan is Pakistan's most popular politician ahead of elections due in October.
In Indonesia, images captured by a CCTV camera show Mount Anak Krakatoa erupting and spewing hot ash clouds. Officials say Mount Anak Krakatoa has erupted 4 times, the biggest sent column of smoke and ash 1,500 meters above its crater. Anak Krakatoa means child of Krakatoa. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the explosion of Krakatoa in 1883 produced the loudest sound ever recorded in modern history. It was heard across more than 10% of Earth's surface.
The European Court of Human Rights, or ECHR, is scheduled to hear cases against Switzerland and France on Wednesday. This is the first time governments will be taken to court for inaction on climate change. The first case is based on a complaint made by an association of elderly people concerned about the environment. They accuse the Swiss government of violating its obligation to protect citizens' well-being. The second case is brought by former French Mayor Damien Carême. Carême argues that French authorities have failed to protect life by not taking sufficient measures to protect against environmental risks. Before the hearings, the ECHR confirmed that the European Convention on Human Rights, which is the foundation of their judgments, does not explicitly include the right to a healthy environment. The ECHR will still proceed with the cases to avoid the undermining of existing rights through harm to environment and exposure to environmental risks. A third case is pending, with the applicants claiming that climate inaction by several countries contributes to heat waves in Portugal. Hearings are only the start of proceedings. Verdicts will likely take several months to reach.
Coming right up, Elon Musk and expert call for halt in a giant AI experiment. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. forms task force for FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023. And Harvard University to offer Tagalog language courses. Catch more news when Mata ng Agila International returns. The Miami Police Department says officers have used Clearview AI's facial recognition software for criminal cases. Clearview AI CEO Juan Hontat says the police department runs nearly 1 million searches. The software uses over 30 million images taken from social media platforms without users' permission. Last year, American Civil Liberties Union sued Clearview to stop selling access to its service to private U.S. corporations and individuals. However, a search request result shows that many cities and police departments were still availing Clearview's services.
Elon Musk and a group of artificial intelligence experts are calling for a 6-month pause in training of systems more powerful than GPT-4. In an open letter, they say the project has potential risks to society and humanity. The letter is also signed by Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak and other industry executives. They also detailed other potential risks such as economic and political disruption. The group also appeals to developers to cooperate and governance and regulatory policymakers.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, is set to discuss dropping the US dollar, euro, yen, and pound sterling from transactions and moving to settlements in local currencies, according to the news magazine Tempo. An official meeting of ASEAN finance ministers and central bank governors kicked off on Tuesday in Indonesia. The regional grouping aims to promote economic and security cooperation among its members. Tempo specified that a digital cross-border payment system allowing ASEAN member states to use local currencies in trade would be expanded further. An agreement on such cooperation was reached between Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, the Philippines, and Thailand in November 2022.
Russia's unmanned Soyuz MS-22 capsule returns to Earth from the International Space Station, or ISS. The damaged capsule landed in Kazakhstan 3 months after suffering a coolant leak. The vessel flew Russian cosmonauts Dmitry Petelin and Sergei Prokopyev and NASA astronaut Frank Rubio to the ISS in September last year. It was due to bring them home, but was hit by what U.S. and Russian space officials believe was a tiny space rock.
Слушаю СМИ, потому что это абсолютно эксклюзивно.
Lionel Messi surpasses 100-goal mark for Argentina. The Argentina captain added another feather to his illustrious hat during the world champions 7-0 thrashing of Curacao. Appearing in his 174th match for Argentina, Messi got to the triple-figure mark in the 20th minute. It was an impressive pass from Giovanni Lo Celso inside the penalty box before Messi went past 2 defenders to find the back of the net. He ended with 2 more strikes to take his international goal tally to 102 and register his 57th hat trick overall. With his 100th goal, Messi is the only footballer to achieve 100 or more international goals. He joins former Iran center forward Ali Daei and his longtime rival Cristiano Ronaldo of Portugal.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has ordered the creation of an interagency task force for the FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023. Marcos signed the Administrative Order No. 5, which creates an interagency task force to harmonize and coordinate all government efforts for the successful participation of all delegates in the FIBA World Cup 2023. Members of the task force shall include heads or designated representatives of the following agencies: DFA, DOH, DILG, DPWH, Department of Transportation, Bureau of Customs, Bureau of Immigration, PNP, and MMDA. Under the order, the task force will be chaired by the Philippine Sports Commission. The order also mandates all government departments, LGUs, private sectors, state universities, and colleges to extend full support and assistance for the country's hosting of the sporting event. Funds necessary for the implementation of the order will be charged against available appropriations of the agencies concerned. The FIBA World Cup is returning to the Philippines after 45 years and will start on August 25 until September 10 of 2023.
Plaintiff Terry Sanderson says the 2016 ski collision with Gwyneth Paltrow in Utah changed his essence. Sanderson explains he experienced an abnormality in his essence after the incident. This made the communication with his family difficult and rough. However, Paltrow's representative, Stephen Owen, argues that any change in Sanderson's personality is due to natural aging. The 76-year-old retired optometrist received 4 broken ribs and a lasting psychological damage from the collision. Sanderson's lawyer says Gwyneth Paltrow needs to pay damages worth $3.3 million. Meanwhile, Paltrow countersued Sanderson for $1 and additional legal expenses.
Deputy Director General of Trung Nguyen Coffee Brand, Fan Giang, says Robusta becomes an alternative to Arabica due to climate change and supply shortages. Experts say Arabica is sensitive to heat and prefers an average annual temperature of around 19 degrees Celsius. However, Robusta can cope better with higher temperatures, enduring 23 degrees Celsius. But coffee customers say Robusta coffee does not satisfy their demand. Coffee specialist Mario Fernandez says Robusta is immersed in a vicious circle of bad quality. Sources report that Robusta's bad impressions omit chances to improve its quality. However, Mori coffee farm owner Tran Ngok had cultivated her Robusta to be better than Arabica. Tran Ngok made her Robusta fruity, flowery in smell, with a strong taste but in a gentle way. Hanoi reports it earned $4 billion in 2022 due to the Arabica supply shortage in Brazil caused by extreme weather, a 32% rise from a year earlier.
Harvard University in the United States will offer a Tagalog language course for the first time. Harvard's official publication, the Harvard Crimson, says the university does not have a Southeast Asian Studies department, but it offers a course on the Philippines. They note the lack of Southeast Asian Studies and language course offerings. Harvard will hire 3 instructors to teach Tagalog with native speakers or those that have near-native fluency in Tagalog. Instructors will teach 5 Tagalog language courses per year. As the 4th most spoken language in the USA, the Tagalog language course will be included beginning at the academic year of 2023 to 2024. And for your midweek motivation, here's a quote from American actor Dwayne Johnson. Success is not always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent hard work leads to success. Greatness will come.
Straight from the horse's mouth. I mean, seeing as how he's kept fit all of these years, right?
Yes, commitment and dedication equals consistency and greatness. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Ricky Matay.
And I am Nina Richielago Flores. Please stay tuned for tonight's episode of Counterpoint with Attorney Salvador Panelo and former DOH Secretary Francisco Duque III. This is Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.